This is the Rodecaster Video S, and it's the latest video mixing console from Rode, and it's a follow-up to the original Rodecaster Video. In one way, you can think of it as video capture on steroids, so you can have me here on my webcam, you can even have me here on the Game Boy. I've got a little top down which we'll be using throughout the rest of this video, and of course I can bring it back to the main camera. But this is also a live stream production powerhouse. So if you do Twitch and YouTube, there's a whole bunch of tools here that are going to be really helpful to you. You can create scenes, you can bring up overlays, you can introduce media, all that kind of fun stuff. And especially if you're into video production, conferencing, or live podcasting, that kind of thing, this thing is also particularly well suited to that. But what if you run a lowly little YouTube channel like myself? There are still a bunch of tools here that are going to be interesting to you, but I'm going to tell you whether or not these are necessarily the best solution for you. But one thing's for sure, if you have a lot of devices on your desk for doing different things, which I do, so I have a Rodecaster Duo, have a video capture device, have my microphones, all of those things, all those devices I need just to sort of get this video done. Perhaps this might be a way for you to consolidate and streamline too, and all for a not terrible price, but we'll get to that in a minute. So let's start off by talking about connectivity, because that's really going to be the main difference between the Rodecaster Video S and the original Rodecaster Video. You still have the two XLR combo ports. These are important because these are going to be used for connecting microphones primarily, but you can also connect instruments as long as they have a 1/4-inch jack output. We see that we have 3 HDMI inputs. Now they don't have to be cameras, they can basically be anything with an HDMI input. For example, an analog pocket which is into a dock which has an HDMI output. And then the 4th HDMI port is your output. So if you want to put that into another computer, a display, recording device, that's the port you're gonna use to do that. Now, on the original Rodecaster Video, you had 4 HDMI inputs and 2 HDMI outputs. This is probably the most significant difference in terms of connectivity. We have some USB ports. Now, these are important as well because they all do different things. So the first one, this is actually a port for using either USB-C microphones or cameras. Basically, you have an additional audio input or a video input. I'm currently using it with the webcam, which is this one. We're looking very blue right now. So you have an optional extra port for video or audio, but there was actually 2 of those on the Rodecaster Video, the original one. Now the next USB port is for USB storage, basically. Press the record button here, and it's going to record onto whatever storage device you have connected here. Images, graphics, overlays, any videos you want to play within your production, you could store it on the SD card, put it into the Rodecaster Video. Now on the Rodecaster Video S, there is no SD card slot, but there's 20 gigabytes of usable onboard storage. You can actually store them directly on the device. Now in a way, I see this as a bit of a benefit because you don't have to deal with memory cards. But depending on your workflow, maybe you prefer to have removable storage. You used to have stereo outs. Those are gone, but you still have 2 headphone outputs. So my preference is always to have the option to have at least 1 headphone port around the front, but there wasn't one on the Rodecaster Video original, so the fact that it's not here is not surprising. So in terms of connectivity, I think you're pretty well catered for. There is a little bit less than there is in a Rodecaster Video, but then that's what we expect, especially as the Rodecaster Video is $1,200, and this is actually $500, so less than half the price. Obviously, Rode had to take some things away in terms of how they've sort of refined and streamlined what there is. I think it's a pretty reasonable choice on their part. So that's it for connectivity, but why don't we actually take a look at how this thing works, some of the controls. So I'm going to jump into the overhead view. There's no faders. The primary way you're going to control things is right here with these pads. So the 2 rows we have, the numbered rows 1 through 4 are your inputs. So basically this is how you can switch between cameras. So back to the overhead or go to that terrible grainy Game Boy video. That's all done with the pads, and they broadly connect to the inputs on the back. So by default, I think this is HDMI 1, 2, and 3, and then this would be your USB-C camera if you have a webcam connected like I do, but you can reassign them. So if you prefer to have, for whatever reason, you want a USB camera over here and then your HDMIs, you can definitely 100% do that either directly on the device or through the Rodecaster app. On the top here is when you have, these are your scene buttons basically, and you have 5 scene buttons. So if you've used OBS, you'll be familiar with scenes. It's when you kind of create a collection of inputs. So you could have 2 cameras, picture in picture, especially if you're doing like video game streaming, something like this is particularly useful. Or you can really just any of your inputs, you can put them all together. If you're having a 4-person podcast, you could have it set to have 4 cameras in one scene. And these are just where you save them so you can jump between them. If you're just a streamer on your own, you could have a wide shot, close-up shot, something on your controller, whatever it is that you're doing. So I have a really fundamental basic scene set up here with my YouTube show logo there in the corner. But so this is kind of a very, very basic scene. And then if I just jump over to here, you can see I've got something a little bit more fancy schmancy. So we have the overhead camera there right in the middle. And then I've got myself picture in picture in the top left there. So, and then I've still got the logo, and I've just put a background in as well so that you can sort of see the sort of thing that you can do. Now you can actually set all of these up directly on the device itself. So this button here, let me actually just jump back to the overhead. So this button here, when you click it, it'll come up with multi-source, and you can see it's got like a basic picture in picture with camera A and camera B, or input A and input B. But if you click on that, you'll see that on the device, there are a few different options you can choose from. You can go through them more, and there's a nice little selection that you can choose right here on the device. So while you're doing something live, and you decide you want to do a picture-in-picture or a scene type thing, you can actually do that. Or you can do it through the Rodecaster software if you're connected to a PC. And I'm going to say it's a lot easier there, and you get more options. It's a lot more flexible. So once you press this button, if you have any overlays loaded up, they'll show up here in blue. So I actually have that logo here. You see I can press the button, turn it on and off. In this one, I have the banner which from my YouTube channel there. Now, notably, you cannot have 2 overlays showing at the same time, at least not this way, because if I press this one, it's going to swap between the 2. That might be useful. There might be a drawback. It depends on your perspective. But this is also why, if I wanted my logo, I put it into a scene, because that way you can have the logo stay on at all times, and then you can bring up overlays as and when you need them. And you'll be able to do, if you want to do chroma key, you can do it right here on the device. In between that, obviously, we have the menu. It's a smaller screen, especially if you're used to the Rodecaster Duo, Rodecaster Pro 2 even, has a much larger screen with a lot more information on it. This one's a little bit compact, but it does it's usable. You can have everything you need. So you've got settings, and then you have this rotary, which is again, will be familiar to anyone that's used a Rodecaster. And then this last button here is your headphone output. So we discussed earlier in the connectivity section that there are 2 headphone outputs, 1/4-inch jacks, and this is your sort of solitary volume control basically. So you can control the volume here, and if you want to change the volume on the other headset, if you just click it, it'll switch over, indicating that now you're controlling the secondary set of headphones, and then you click it back. So that is pretty much it for the main controls. Obviously, I forgot this slightly important button, which is the good old record button. You can see it's red right now because I am recording this show, if you like, or this video. But you can start and stop recording here as long as you have a connected USB storage device. And again, as with pretty much every other function on the Rodecaster Video S, you can also trigger and stop recording via the Rodecaster Companion app as well. Let's talk a little bit more about switching now, because it is its primary function. It's probably the thing you're going to be doing with it the most. Now, I'm showing you the software here because it's just a little bit easier to visually explain it. But as you can see right now, we've got source 1 is activated. And if I press source 2, you'll see that the red changes to show you which source you're on. Pretty straightforward stuff. But if we look over in the corner here where it says camera 1, then you'll see that from within the Rodecaster software, you can select what the source is going to be and whether you want to key it or not. So there you would be able to check if you want to take out everything that's blue. Look at that. That's pretty good, right? I obviously don't have a blue green screen, so it's just doing its best job. But so you'll be able to activate keying here. You can add a background, and you can also decide what audio is being recorded as you go. So there's a pretty decent level of control. It's not letting me choose it right now because I'm recording, but here is where you would be able to define your sources as well. And you can change the transition as well, which is actually on the device. There's a button for doing it. But if you want a gradient, a fade, or if you want more of a wipe, these are all things that you can do both on the device. Let's put that on the overhead. So if I put this button here, and you've got the sort of dip, wipe, so, and then when I change, you'll see that it corresponds. Now, scenes are a little bit more complicated, which is why I suggested it's probably better to do them in Rodecaster app if you have the option, because you'll see here on screen that you actually have some more options. So this is the basic scene I showed you earlier, just with my logo in the corner. Look over on the left, you'll see I've preloaded some media, not a lot, just some for testing. From this menu, you'll be able to choose what media or even what video source you want to see. And then you can see that it comes up with a little overlay where you can change the X and Y position, the width and the height of it, and of course the rounded corners. And you can also drag and drop here to sort of resize it manually if you want. And you can drag it around the screen, put it wherever you want. Here is where you would add all your different inputs if you want another camera. So let's bring in the top down, and it brings it up there full size, but that's way too big. So I'm going to resize that down. And then you can bring this here so I could actually give you like a nice tutorial to camera, for example, and you can see what I'm doing at the same time. Loads of applications for this, particularly in video game streaming, that kind of thing. And then you can add up to all 4 inputs basically if you want. And then if you decide to add a border, let's give it a nice bright yellow one. And it's going to actually add that to every element that you have in your scene. So you see it's on my logo as well as it is on the thing, which is slightly annoying, but I'm not really sure if there's a sort of way around that. And you can change the thickness. Let's make it nice and chunky. There you go. So nice thick borders so you can have things stand out if you want them to. It's a really, really, really quick overview of scenes. There's actually a lot more you can do with it, which is going to be something I'll rather do in another video because otherwise we're going to be here all day. But scenes and changing sources in the software is the place to be, in my opinion. If you have the option and you're going to do it on your computer, that's definitely the place to do it. And the good news is that you don't physically need the Rodecaster Video S connected to a computer for you to be able to do a lot of these controls. A lot of it you can do over Wi-Fi as long as the computers are on the same network. So I want to talk a little bit about the audio mixer because this is a Rodecaster after all. It does have podcasting credentials. There's a load of tools that have carried over from the Rodecaster Pro and Duo, sort of vocal settings, microphone settings, that kind of thing. So this is pretty good when it comes to audio. But on the device itself, there are no faders or anything like this. So kind of addressing the audio side of things is a little bit limited. You can jump into the menus, find a microphone or the audio input source from if it's a video, and you can sort of reduce it and do some basic editing that way, but it's not a pretty experience. Whereas if you want to do something a bit more robust and get in with the sort of faders and mute people and sort of things like that, then you're definitely going to want to use the Rodecaster app for that, where you get a full mixer. As you can see, I've only got one audio input going at the moment, which is this microphone. Word to the wise, if you're recording and you decide to click this button, there's a little mute button there, and then you forget about it, and then you carry on recording several takes for your YouTube video, you're going to be silenced. And there's no, which is kind of obvious, but what my point is that there's no visual feedback on the device itself on the Rodecaster Video S hardware to say that your primary microphone is muted. If you are going to use the mute buttons on the Rodecaster software, please make sure you have them visible at all times. Otherwise, you're going to cause yourself a world of pain. Yes, there is a software mixer with faders that is going to make more of a podcast style production a lot easier. And then within this, you can see if you click on all your sources, this is going to be really familiar to anyone that's got a Rodecaster Pro or a Duo. And then you can change, you have de-esser, noise gate, compressor, all the things you would expect to find on a Rodecaster. And even still has sort of, you can change the source type, including the type of microphone. And it's even got the SM7B, which is what I'm using here, which is fantastic because it just saves you a whole bunch of setup. Phones, same with USB. It's going to give you sort of limited access to certain tools. Like most of the important ones are here, but are obviously dependent on what the audio source is and what it's expecting. So in HDMI as well, you have the same types of tools, but you're not obviously getting a choice of microphones because that doesn't make any sense. There is Bluetooth connectivity, so you can connect Bluetooth as an audio source. That's pretty handy, especially if you want to bring in phone calls and that type of thing. So in terms of audio, the Rodecaster Video S maybe not as tactile as something like the Rodecaster Pro 2 or the Rodecaster Duo, but I guess that's what we're expecting. It's a video forward device. But with the software mixer, it does really enhance what you can do with this thing. So if you are looking to use this in more of a podcast environment, it is pretty capable. Just know that you don't have the access to the faders and that you would on a regular Rodecaster. However, you can use a Rodecaster Pro Duo in conjunction with the Rodecaster Video. Simply take the USB out of the Rodecaster audio, plug it into as a virtual microphone on the Rodecaster Video, and then you'll be able to have the best of both worlds. You're obviously occupying one of your USB slots, but it's definitely something you can do, and it makes them work really, really well together. Now, I've covered a lot of ground in this video, so if you've stuck with it, thanks for that. But there's still a whole bunch of things we didn't get to dive into fully. So I didn't even mention auto switching, which is this cool feature for podcasting, where the Rodecaster Video can automatically switch between video feeds depending on who's talking. If you're into streaming, we didn't really dive into that either. This can do it natively. You don't need a computer in the way. It can just send your feed straight out to the internet. There's a whole lot more to explore. But what I was really hoping with this video is that A, you get to understand what the device is and what it does. And if you're the sort of person who was maybe looking at like an A10 Mini Pro or an A10 Mini even, you've got a bit more information to decide whether this is the device for you. And of course, if you're sort of more on the Stream Deck, OBS, maybe a bit of Ecamm vibe, then perhaps you've seen in this video what the Rodecaster Video S can do for you. Maybe it's exactly what you need. Maybe it's not quite what you need, somewhere in between. Either way, I hope you come away informed. But let's talk about the price, $500. Now, I'm not going to lie, that is not no money. Bear in mind that the original Rodecaster Video was $1,200. Suddenly, from that perspective, it seems like a no-brainer because you're getting way more than half of the connectivity for less than half the price and nearly all of the functionality. So from a value proposition from that point of view, this thing is a really, really good deal. But obviously, on the other hand, $500, if you're just starting out and you need something that kind of does a bit of everything, yet $500 is not a small spend. So you're going to have to think about it. Maybe you just want to get an interface first and use something like OBS, again, depending on your workflow. Either way, there's a lot to think about here. It's great to see Rode coming out with a more affordable, smaller, and still feature-rich version of the Rodecaster Video. And in the meantime, I just need you to get out there and go create.